it's Dory. Welcome back to another video here at my YouTube channel. I'm glad you're here today and I hope you are all doing well. Today I want to show you a fun way you can make a set of multiple cards so that you can really get a lot or get the most out of your crafting time. Today I'm going to be using a layering stamp set from Altenew. I'm going to be using the Beautiful Day as well as the stamp wheel. We'll talk a little more about the stamp wheel in a second. This beautiful layering set from Altenew was actually my very first set, and as you can see, it is quite stained, or as we crafters like to say, it is very well loved. Like it doesn't even stick on to my little sheets anymore. So this one was going to work out great for our activity today. The star of the show today, however, really is the stamp wheel from Altenew. You've seen me use this in the past with stencils and holding stencils in place with the sticky mat. Today, however, we're going to be using the flip plate in order to quickly do some multiple stamping and really get, like I said, get the most out of our crafting time. Now you can see I have these little enamel flower stickers on mine. That is just to help me to be able to line up where I need it to be, the position where I need it to be. The blue dot for me is up at the center so that I know that that is basically my 12 o'clock. And you'll see as we go through this, we're going to rotate it at different times and intervals in order to make our multiple images. Now, if you don't have the stamp wheel, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You can still do this with your MISTI. It'll just take you a little longer. I'm going to start each layer of the 4 flowers we're going to do are all going to be the same. I have a 6x6 square piece of Nina Solar White cardstock laid down onto my stamping stage for the stamp wheel. And I'm going to just lay down this bottom image first. I kind of had to wipe it off a little bit because they are so old, y'all. So I just needed to get a little more stickiness on there. So I'm going to just lay it up here in the corner at kind of a little bit of an angle because basically what we're going to do is we're going to stamp one and then stamp another and rotate the plate around and you'll see what I mean here. I'm going to take my flip plate. I'm going to line up my blue dot right up there at the top, and then the 2 little pink dots or red dots go into those corners. I'll pick up the stamp, flip it over. That's why it's called the flip plate. And each one of these, the base for each one of the flowers is going to be in antique linen. We'll change the other colors as we go along. Now, for me, it was easier to move my stamp wheel or the base out of the way and just have the flip plate be flat on the surface so I got a good coverage on there. So then I will come in and I just kind of wiped off some excess ink that I had. And I will bring the base back over, flip the plate back over again, line up that blue dot basically at 12 o'clock with the 2 red ones in the corner there. We'll just put that in there and it locks itself into place. And then I'll just give it a good press down. Make sure that's got some good coverage on there. I didn't want to press too hard, but wanted to press firmly enough that I got the impression that I needed. Okay, so we'll pull that up and there's our first base. Now, we're going to keep the stamp right where it is. And we're going to flip it back over and we're going to ink it up again, just like we did. The same antique linen distress oxide ink. And this time, when we flip over our plate, we're going to take our blue dot and we're going to rotate it and we're going to move it basically to 3 o'clock. So you're going to go from 12 and then 3 and then we'll go down to 6 and then over at 9. So we're going to turn it all the way and you'll see now our blue dot is lined up over there at 3 o'clock. And we're going to just press that down again. And there is our second image. All right, so flip it back over and we'll repeat the same process again. And this is why having the stamp wheel makes it really easy because you can do all four of them on the one piece of paper. If you do this in your MISTI, which you can, you'll probably need to do multiple pieces of paper because you won't be able to, you're not moving the stamp, you're moving the paper more in the MISTI. So now I'm just going to speed it up here a little bit. I did the same thing, and each time I just rotated it a quarter of a turn. So 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. That's why it was important to have a different color dot there or a little enamel sticker so that I knew where I needed to move the foot plate to. Okay, so for the second layers, each flower will be in a different color. So this is the second layer. So I'm going to line it up onto the top of the first image. And it was really hard to see because the stamp is so stained, but I think I finally got it lined up correctly. Again, lining up that blue dot at 12 o'clock, flip the plate over, and our second color for our first flower is going to be Kitsched Flamingo. Yep. Well, it's upside down. Sorry. Kitsched Flamingo is going to be our second color. Same exact process. We're going to do this very same thing that we did the first time. We're going to just ink up our stamp right here. Again, it was just a little easier off of the base there to make sure I got a good coverage. Flip over the plate. That all lined up. I was trying to all keep it in range of the camera so that you guys could see what I was doing as well. Line up our dot at 12 o'clock. Lock in our corners and give it a good press. And here is our second layer, pretty pink. Give that a, just wipe that off with my little cloth. And we'll come in now with our second color, which is going to be dried marigold. Same thing. That out of the way. I have a rather large desk for crafting, but I swear it's never big enough for what I need it to do. I'm always pushing stuff out of the way. Put some ink on there. Okay, flip it over, and our second flower is the 3 o'clock flower. So flip that over, take our blue dot, line it up at 3 o'clock, and push it down. And that will be layer number 2 for flower number 2. So I'm going to speed it up here just a little bit to kind of go, because it really is super simple. Third color is speckled egg. I'm going to ink up the stamp, flip it over, rotate that blue dot down to 6 o'clock, and press it down. Because remember, the paper hasn't moved, the stamp hasn't moved. We're just rotating it, and that is what just makes this process. The stamp wheel really helps when you want to make multiple cards like this. Fourth color is, or the second color for the fourth flower is bundled sage. Rotating it over to 9 o'clock. Gonna press that down. And you can see it's all starting to come together. Very, very simple, very easy. Maybe some pretty flowers. I liked this stamp set for this because there were 4 layers for it, it didn't take too long to do. 4 was enough. But if you have a stamp that, or a layering stamp set that has 4, 5, or 6 layers, then the process is the same. Now with this one, I decided to just for the purposes of trying to line up this stamp, because like I said, these stamps are very well loved, so it's a little hard for me to see where they needed to layer. So it's just easier for me to see looking from the bottom up rather than the top down. So I'm using it the same way, making sure that the stamp wheel is, logo is at the top. And then we'll come in with our flip plate again. Once again, repeating all this process the same exact way again with the third layer. And each layer, I just increased the darkness of the ink. So for this pink flower, our next layer is picked raspberry. We'll do that, flip that over, and line up our dot at 12 o'clock, press it down, wipe it off, move on to our next one. The next layer is carved pumpkin. And then pop that down there. 3 o'clock, wipe it off. Come in with number third flower. Third color is broken china. I'll have all the colors listed in the blog post that will go with this as well. Press that down. Super simple. It really took no time at all. And then the next color for the third or the final flower is stormy sky. So fourth flower, third layer, stormy sky. We'll wipe that off. And then we'll come in again with our final layer, which is this pretty little outline stamp layer. For the first one, we're going to do seedless preserves. I'll slow it down just a little bit here again so you can just get a really good understanding of what's going on. Just ink up our stamp, flip our plate over. There we are. We're back to 12 o'clock. Push that down. We'll wipe it off and we'll move on to the last layer of the second flower, which is going to be crackling campfire. That down. And then finally we will do, well, for the third flower, the last layer is peacock feathers. We'll rotate it. This one is at 6 o'clock down there at the very bottom. And finally, to finish off all of our layering flowers here, gathered twigs is going to be our final layer with this last flower. Okay, so rotate that around. There you go. Couldn't find it. 9 o'clock. Press it down. And there we go. So now I can take this off of my sticky mat. The paper is done really well sticking on there. You can see we have these 4 beautiful layered flowers that really took us no time to do. Honestly, it took me longer to tell you how to do it than to actually do it. So now I'm going to take the coordinating die cuts and I'm going to cut out each one of the flowers. I'm just going to line it up here, use a little tape, and I will run it through my my Spellbinders Platinum 6. For me, that is my little magic mat, and then a plate, and then I use my tan embossing folder to push it through there. Or actually not, I apologize. I'm not using my embossing. That's a later step. Just running that through my machine. Sometimes I get a little ahead of myself. And then I will pop that off of there. Remove the tape. And then I'll do one more. Just lining that up onto the next flower. Piece of tape there. Run that back through. All the way. And then I repeated the same thing with the other 2. And so then I had to cut out all 4 of the flowers. So now we're going to move on to the leaves, and I started doing the leaves the same exact way. Here you can see I've already done the first layer. Now I will say that for this method of doing it, um, by doing it with a clock method, that I had done, you really need to make sure that your paper is a square. So our first one was a 6 by 6 piece of paper. This one's a little bit smaller. I think this one's about 5.5 by 5.5. You're gonna have some paper in the middle that you don't use, but for me, and it all really just depends on the size of your stamp. These stamps were a little bit larger, so I needed more space on the paper in order to be able to rotate it. Again, here just trying to get it all lined up. The first layer was all stamped in bundled sage. All of these are going to be stamped the same way, with the same colors, unlike the flowers where we changed the colors. So lining up that blue dot up there at 12 o'clock again. Just going to come in now with some rustic wilderness. Y'all, I'm telling you, bundled sage and rustic wilderness are by far my favorite layered stamp combination. I just think they work beautifully together. They're probably the only thing that you'll ever see me actually stamp leaves in, because I love it. It's so pretty. All right, so just going to press that down just like we did. It is all the same exact process as before. So now we'll come in and I will line up the next one at 3 o'clock, press that down, and just going to speed this up and do the other layers. Press that down. Didn't really even need to clean off the stamp in between because I was doing the same, the same colors each time. So do that. And then for the final layer, the color we're going to be using when I get it lined up here is going to be pine needles. So you'll see that in just a second. Flip over the plate, pick up that stamp. Super easy. And like I said, we're going to be using pine needles. Ink it up. The leaves went even quicker than the flowers did. All right, so line up that. And like I said, the stamp wheel makes it so much easier because you're not worried about lining up the stamp. You only have to line up the stamp one time. As long as you continue to rotate the flip plate the way that you did for the other ones, it'll always be exactly where it needs to be. So it just takes a lot of the uncertainty out of it, and I find the more that I'm using my stamp wheel, the more that I am really enjoying it. So it's a little on the expensive side, but if you're a crafter, and you do a lot of crafting, or even if you don't do a lot of crafting, but you're just looking for ways to kind of simplify the process, I highly recommend it. To me, it's worth the investment. So now we have all of our leaves, and again, I will eventually cut those out. So now we're going to move on. I'm going to do some embossing. I decided I wanted to add a little bit of embossing to the cards. Very simple. We're going to just do the same embossing folder. I have 4 pieces of cardstock cut just slightly smaller than a standard size card. And then I just have this is an old Cuttlebug embossing folder I've had forever. They don't go bad, so, use them. Okay, so if you don't know, one of the tricks that you can do to get a good impression for embossing is to just spray down your paper with just a little mist of water. You've seen me do this before. Sometimes I do it with like a perfect pearl shimmer to get a little bit of shine, but today I'm just doing plain white paper. Gonna bring in my machine here. Okay, so now this is where I'm gonna use my tan embossing folder, which I told you I was using earlier, which I was not. So the platform, the embossing folder, and the tan embossing mat. And once again, I apologize for the wobbly camera. I have a very wobbly desk when I start doing or doing things in my embossing machine. Okay, so I ran all of those through and got those, and now we're going to move on to the sentiments. Now, when I have extra pieces of paper like this, I will set these off to the side, and when I get done, I try to cut them down into what would be used for these sentiment strips. Jennifer McGuire, a few years ago, however long ago it was, did a video on which she showed us how to make these sentiment strip templates, and they just make they they help you make sentiments very quick and easy. So if you have not seen that video, I highly encourage you to do a little search for that and watch it. She does a great job explaining it. It's a very time efficient way to be able to grab a piece of paper when you need a sentiment and help to line up your sentiments perfectly when you need them. I'm going to be using the 2 sentiments that are in the set. We have a total of 4 cards, so I'm going to do 2 cards with each of the sentiments. Super easy. Both of them also are about the same size. So when I was looking at this, I decided that I'm going to be using the 3/4 inch template guide that I have here. And I've already cut down my little strips of paper to 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. And we're going to just, once again, use our stamp wheel along with our little template guide. It's going to be super easy to do. Okay, so I have just a basic scratch piece of paper on my sticky mat in my wheel here. And at this point, the sentiment does not have to be straight when you stamp it to begin with. So I'm just going to pick up my stamp again with the flip plate. We're not going to do any rotating this time. We're all this will be just done with the dot up at the top. So I'm using some VersaFine black ink here, and I'm going to flip that over and just line up my dot up there at 12. And I brought in my little tool this time so I get a little more good pressure on there. Okay, so now what we'll do is we will set that plate off to the side, and we're going to come in with our little template guide here. And I'm going to line it up where I want it on my sentiment. Now, if I had been planning a little bit better, I would have made these a little more in the center rather than onto the side. But what happens is you lay this down and the mat is keeping the guide in place. Now I'm going to come in with the actual strip that I'm going to stamp on and put on my card. I'm going to put that in that little tiny groove for the template. And I'm just adding a little piece of paper or a little piece of tape there to keep it in place. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to ink my stamp once again, very gently. I'm going to flip my plate over and line that up at 12 o'clock right there. And this just helps me to make sure that I get a good centered sentiment onto my paper. So, and you'll see here what you mean. It's over there, what I meant about it being over there on the edge. So this is I'm going to keep the same guide there with the same stamp set. This is going to be our second one with this sentiment, and then we'll go on and we'll do the second sentiment for the other 2 cards. So just popping that back in there, inking this up, and pressing that down. Now, do you really have to do the sentiment, the sentiment strip guides? Probably not, but I just thought it would be an extra layer of security to make sure that my sentiments were going to be lined up right where I wanted them to be. And I hadn't used these in a long time, and I thought, well, why not? Okay, so I repeated the same process with the other sentiment. So we have a total of 4 sentiments, 2 of the same for each card. So now we're going to add a little more interest to our card base. I have 4 standard size card bases, and I'm just going to do a little bit of inking around the edges here. And I'm using the same colors that were for the last layer of each of our flowers. Now, full disclosure, I realized when I did this that I have blueprint sketch up there instead of peacock feathers. I realized that a little bit later on, and actually, I did I went back and actually did one with the peacock feathers. So again, I'm just using some dome foam right here, and I'm just going to take my little foam tool and I'm just going to brush it all along the side. There's a lot of white in these cards, so I wanted to make sure that I added just a little bit of color, and I thought by using the same color that was the darkest part of the flower would help to tie all of the colors in. So as I said, just running that through there really quick. I'm gonna just add a nice little edge there. Folded the card so that I could get that edge done. And then I will speed this up here. I'm just gonna pop that foam off of there. And I came in and I did the same exact thing for the remaining cards. Just gonna speed this up really quick so you can just see. I wish I could do it this fast in real life, but even still, it didn't take that long to do. Fold that over, that off. And I did one in Blueprint Sketch and then realized later that that was the wrong color. So I just set that off to the side, and I'll save that for another project later. I did go back and actually do one with the correct color. It took me a minute when I started actually layering up the flower onto that card. I was like, why does this not look correct? And then I thought, well, because I didn't use the right color on the edge. So the last one, seedless preserve, super quick. Get all that done. Along the edges there. I think having ways in which you can make multiple cards by just changing up a few things makes it very interesting and very fun with your crafting time. Okay, so now here are all of the bits and parts to our 4 cards. We have our card base, in which everything is inked on the edges. We have our embossed panel, and then I did 2 leaves. I actually only showed you one set of 4 leaves. I did that same process twice so that every card would have every flower would have 2 leaves. So I'm just going to show you very quickly how I put one together. Just going to, very simple and easy. I'm just going to take my tape runner. I'm going to add the embossed panel here. And you can see I used the backside of another project that didn't quite work out. So, always know there's always a backside to your paper. Don't waste your paper. Nobody will ever know that I did something else other than you guys, that I did something else on that side of the paper. So I'm just going to push that down. And now I'm going to come in with my leaves, figure out where I want my flower and my leaves to be. And even though the cards are all basically the same, I did try to figure out ways to make them just a little bit different, depending on where I decided to lay the leaves and the flower. So I'm going to use my liquid adhesive here for the leaves. I'm going to move my flower off of there, kind of keep the leaves where I want them to be. And I decided to I took a little, I took my pencil. There it is, find that. I have a pencil here, and I'm just gonna make just a little mark right there so I know where I want the leaves to be, or the leaf stems to go. And like I said, I am just going to add some liquid adhesive all around the edges here, and I will lay that down. Flip that over and just find my little pencil mark, lay those there. All right, and then I'll come in with my second leaf right here, all around the edges there. And this one, I knew I wanted this one to kind of turn down a little bit. That there. Just getting that positioned where I want it to be. Okay, so for the flower in the center, I decided I wanted to pop it up on a little bit of dimension adhesive. I just have this roll of dimension adhesive that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. It tears pretty simply. There were, I think on a couple of them, I had to use some scissors, but for the most part, it tore fairly easily. So I'm just gonna tear some strips off and pop that up there, and I'll put that right into the center of the leaves. Again, here with me and release paper, you know, it takes forever. It's my nemesis. That off of there. Okay, I'm gonna push that down. There was a little piece sticking out there, of adhesive sticking out there, so I just tucked that back behind there. And then finally, I will come in with the sentiment. I was just trying to see where exactly I wanted it to be. And because I had stamped the sentiment over on closer to the side there, I decided to bring in my trimmer, and I just trimmed it off a little bit more so it wasn't hanging over quite so much. And I'm just going to make a little flag end here. So I'm going to take my scissors, little snip up the middle, and then a little snip on each side, a little triangle there. Super easy. Just adds a little bit of interest. And I will also put the sentiment onto some adhesive, or foam adhesive. And we'll just take and do 2 little strips there. And again, pulling off that release paper. And then this is going to pretty much finish off the card. A lot of white space in this card, but also still a lot of fun color. That was why, like I said, I decided to edge the ink of, or the sides of the edges of the card base, because I just felt like it was just a lot of white, and the color just helps to tie it in all together a little bit more and make it cohesive. So there's our first card finished. Just ran my fingers along there to get a good impression. Here is a look at all 4 cards. I wasn't going to sit there and glue all of them together because that would have just been really boring to watch. I did add a little gemstone into the center of each one. Here's a little close-up look of each one. And like I said, I did change a little bit um, the where I positioned the flowers and how I did the leaves and everything. Just little things like that are ways you can change multiple card sets, but still have them be very fun. Here's one last close-up look of each of the cards. You can find more pictures in it and information for each of them in today's blog post. Thank you so much once again for being here. Have a great day, and I'll see you again next time.